Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of the Big East Hoops podcast/videos. Today I'll be covering the Big East year in review. It is currently April 24th and all of NCAA basketball has ended, and I'll be looking back on this year in Big East. In today's video I'll be covering the previews and the post views of the four best players and teams in the Big East this year and looking at what I thought of them before and after. Who we'll be covering today is the Marquette Golden Eagles. Marquette came out of nowhere this year. Nobody really put them at the top of the Big East. Everything was kind of between Villanova and St. John's. But sophomore guard Marcus Howard brought them to the top, and he played like the alpha, and he dominated the Big East this year, averaging just above 25 points per game and scoring the most points in the game in NCAA history when he scored 51, and then beating his own mark 2 months later. The Eagles finished the year at a record of 25-9 and 12-6 in conference. They shared the conference title with the Villanova Wildcats despite not making the championship game of the Big East tournament. They shared the regular season title with Villanova and lost in the Final Four to Seton Hall of the Big East tournament, and then took a first-round exit to 12-seed Murray State led by Ja Morant. Marquette had an above-average regular season. They had an extremely below-average postseason, only winning one postseason game out of three they played in. The Marquette Golden Eagles won their first-round game of the Big East tournament against DePaul, but then lost to Seton Hall in the Final Four of the Big East tournament and got a 5 seed in the national tournament and took a first-round exit to 12-seed Murray State in a game where they were picked as the favorite. Next school we'll be covering is the Villanova Wildcats, who had an extremely down year this year. Coming off a national tournament win, Coach Jay Wright, who had won 2 out of the last 3 national tournaments, was expecting another year with incoming recruits Cole Swider and Javon Quinterly expected to make serious contributions off the bench and potentially in the starting lineup. Despite expectations, neither freshman, Swider or Quinterly, started or played serious minutes. Quinterly played about an average of 9.2 minutes per game, averaging 3.2 points, and Swider played about 11 minutes a game, averaging just above 6 season at 26-10 and a 13-5 Big East record, which is by far their worst in the last 5 years. Villanova seemed to perform in the postseason as they went on to win the Big East tournament, being the 2 seed, and survive the first round of the national tournament against St. Mary's, who had previously upsetted number 1 Gonzaga in their conference tournament. Despite taking a serious loss to Purdue, handed to them by Carson Edwards, the point guard at Purdue, who scored 42 points against Villanova in the second round of the tournament. Villanova had a better year than what they started, as they lost to Furman in overtime at home, got blown out by Michigan by 27 in a rematch of last year's title game, and lost to Penn by 1, which sparked the Javon Quinterly situation, which may have received more publicity than Villanova's win. Had a down year is their lack of senior leadership this year. In previous years, they've had star-studded senior classes, including Ryan Arcidiacono, Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, and those guys, who may not have all been seniors, but were definitely leaders on and off the court and graduated or entered the NBA draft. This year, having only 2 contributing seniors in Pascal and Booth, leadership was lacking in the Villanova locker room. This left doors open for controversy and players getting out of line and many things that led to the program falling apart this year and ultimately led them to collapsing in situations. I'll be covering is the Seton Hall Pirates, who had an extremely up and down season this year, including wins that included a knockoff of number 5 ranked Kentucky in Kentucky, who had a star-studded lineup compared to Seton Hall's, and was a huge win for the Pirates over the Wildcats. Junior guard Miles Powell, who filled up the stat sheet this year for the Pirates. They had an extremely good year up until the postseason started. The Wildcats danced through the Big East tournament and gave Villanova a run for their money in the Big East title, but ultimately lost in the Big East title game and then lost in the first round of the tournament in their rematch with Kentucky due to poor performances by star players Miles Powell and Powell are expected to up their game as the postseason comes, not downgrade it. Both stars played extremely poorly against Villanova, including Powell missing the game-winning shot that could have put the Pirates over the top against Villanova in the Big East tournament, and played a lackluster game against the Wildcats in the national tournament, which led to their Pirates finished the year at 20-14 overall and 9-9 in conference, which is far better than what people thought they would be. It was an extremely good year with room for a lot of learning for the Pirates as they approach Miles Powell's senior year. Fourth and final team I will be covering is the St. John's. Started the year a whopping 14-0 and looked like they were going to run the table on Big East play, led by star point guard Shamorie Ponds, who was lighting up the scoreboard, averaging just above 27 points per game for most of the year. The Johnnies won their first 14 games, led by second-year head coach Chris Mullin and former Johnny himself. The St. John's Johnnies had an extremely good year up until conference play started. The Johnnies were 14-2 entering conference play, and since then took an extremely downhill swing at going 7-11 in conference time of play, and finishing the year at 21-13. Up and down play was extremely reliant on star guard Shamorie Ponds. Ponds played lights-out basketball through the majority of the regular season and then just seemed to drop off and disappear once postseason play hit. Ponds struggled against Villanova multiple times and struggled against Butler as well, and struggled in their play-in game in the national tournament in which they lost.